So Riverside was a planned community, and back in the mid-1800s, the people that came here were looking for something to grow. And a woman named Eliza Tibbets actually helped make it possible. She and her husband Luther actually brought in the Washington navel. And we have one of the original Washington navel trees on the corner of Arlington and Magnolia, and it dates back to about 1867. It was seedless. It was not only seedless, but it was beautiful and it was juicy, and people were very excited about the Washington navel. So they started to grow it even more. My name is Tracy Kahn, and I'm the curator of the University of California Riverside Citrus Variety Collection. So the Citrus Variety Collection was developed as part of a citrus experiment station that was established here in 1907. The collection started about 1910, and it was established across town from where we are right now, where the citrus experiment station was originally located. And it was brought here because there was a burgeoning or growing industry of growers. And there were lots of things they didn't know. So they advocated to the University of California up in Berkeley that they needed an experiment station to answer some of the research questions or some of the things they needed to know to continue their industry. So these books were written by a number of different researchers. So they wrote different chapters. So these are researchers who were part of the Citrus Experiment Station and then became part of the UC Riverside, because when this became a University of California campus, about 50 years after it was a Citrus Experiment Station, they expanded the number of faculty, and all of those faculty were involved with research as well as then became involved with teaching as well. It's a 5-volume series called The Citrus Industry, and there was an earlier version of it published back around 1949 that was only 2 volumes. But then they learned a lot more about the industry and more about growing citrus, and then in 1967, around then, they published 5 different volumes. So different volumes, different years. The one I'm holding that I wanted to show you, because it has a chapter on the Citrus Experiment Station, is volume 5. And it's kind of cool because it relates to the history you've been talking about. This is a picture right in 1907, in June of 1907, with John Henry Reed, who is the guy that actually advocated for there to be a citrus experiment station, along with many other people, but he was one of the principal people, talking in downtown Riverside next to John Muir, who is the noted naturalist that many people are aware of. So this was an important community. It brought all sorts of people into Riverside to try to help the cause of preserving nature. This particular book is sort of dear to me because this belonged to W.P. Bitters, who was the curator from 1946 to 1982, and he put these little tabs on each separate chapter relating to different aspects of the diversity of citrus. So citrus, different genera or different groups like limes, sweet oranges, sour oranges. And if you open up the book, and I'm not going to probably find a section now, but he's written in the margins. So there's something he's underlined. Oh yeah, there is a comment. No. What does he write? No. He just circled apart and said no cloud dragon. So he's corrected it in the book. So sometimes it feels like he's talking to me from beyond. So the citrus industry, when Riverside got going, was huge. I mean, it was amazing in all different kinds of ways because it was the crop that people focused on, and it allowed the industry to build around it. So they had to build ways to ship it to other parts of the state and country. They had to figure out railroad passages, banking systems, ways to move water. they had to have labor to harvest and care for these trees. So it actually helped build a whole movement in this area. And it, at one point, and this was one of the wealthiest communities west of the Mississippi. And the citrus industry is still huge. California and Florida are the largest producers of citrus in the United States. So the citrus variety collection, scientists think of it as a germplasm collection, but what that really means is that it's a collection of many different kinds of citrus, but also things that are closely related to citrus. So this collection is one of the world's most diverse collections. We have 29 of the 33 genera in a subfamily of the family that citrus is in. So most people think of citrus as lemons, limes, oranges, and grapefruit, and maybe pomelos, maybe citrons. But this collection has much more than cultivars of that. We have about 850 of different cultivars of those things. But then beyond that, we have many, many different citrus relatives that are not things that you may have ever seen before. But it becomes very important when you're doing research or you're trying to breed for tolerance to this citrus disease that's affecting the United States now, called Wang Being or citrus greening. Things like having a citrus diversity collection becomes very important. So the research that I'm involved with, which I know best, is research involved with breeding and evaluating new cultivars for the citrus industry. We actually have funding from the Citrus Research Board, which is the growers, is the market board for the citrus growers in California. So currently our focus is on breeding new cultivars that will be resistant or tolerant to this citrus disease called Wang Being. And this disease is caused by a bacteria, but it's actually moved by an insect called Asian citrus psyllid that visits the citrus trees, young leaves of the citrus trees, like young flush of the citrus trees, to actually complete its life cycle. And then in the process of visiting those young leaves, it transfers that bacteria to the tree. And once that bacteria is in the tree, it will go down to the roots and then expand through the tree and eventually kill that tree. But in the process, it'll make the fruit not taste good, it'll make them unattractive, and it'll basically make it not suitable as a crop. Both as a fresh fruit crop in California, which is what we're concerned about, but also in Florida, it's had a huge effect on the juice industry because they have been devastated by the spread of this insect carrying the bacteria all throughout Florida. The fact that they've had hurricanes as well has not helped them. The fact that they didn't know a lot about the disease in the beginning also did not help Florida, because they ended up moving the disease throughout Florida inadvertently on some citrus relative trees that they didn't even know would carry the disease. So it's actually been really hard for Florida, and we're trying to avoid that in California now. And so there are many researchers at the University of California, Riverside, who are working on various different aspects of this disease. So this is one of the things in the collection. This is called Hawaiian mock orange. That's its common name, not its botanical name. But why I'm showing you this is kind of cool that most people think of citrus as being orange, or they might know blood oranges that are a little bit red on the outside, but here's something that's pure red. And Bill Bitters, who was the curator a long time ago, used to say we have things as small as a green pea, like this. We have things as bigger than your head. We have red citrus, blue citrus, orange citrus, green citrus. And this one, Hawaiian mock orange, doesn't look like citrus leaves either. And one of the things that's not so great about this is that it's grown as an ornamental in Florida, and they didn't even know it was related to citrus, but it actually carried the bacteria that causes citrus greening, and they moved it in nursery centers throughout the state of, throughout Florida, without knowing they were moving the disease as well. Because it was an ornamental, so they didn't think of it as a citrus crop at all. Okay. Okay, this is another citrus relative that doesn't look exactly like citrus. It looks, my husband thinks they look sort of like coyote turds, but that would not be very marketable description. But they're called Australian finger lime. They're Microcitrus australasica. And the cool thing is when I cut it in half with my knife and you open it up, the juice vesicles come out like little bubbles, and you can see the seeds as well, but they look like caviar. And so the common name for this is citrus caviar. And so when you eat the juice vesicles, and there are a number of chefs that are using them on hors d'oeuvres. They're using them in mixed drinks, like in a margarita with a salt. They would add these to that. But when you eat them, they taste like lime. But they're really pretty, and they have a slight pink tinge to them. Okay, so these are a type of citrus that most people don't know very much about. These are called citrons. This is what most citrons look like on the outside. Some are a little rounder, some are bigger, smaller, and I'll cut it open in a second. But this is a citrus, another citron called Buddha's hand citron. This one's Italian citron, and this one's Buddha's hand. Buddha's hand citron was probably a small genetic change that actually generated this thousands and thousands of years ago, so that each part of the section are separate. So that it has these fingered-like subjects, fingered-like ports to it, so it looks like a hand. And if you cut it open, and I can cut open this one, it has no flesh inside of it. So this one's mostly used for ornamental purposes and flower decorations or to scent rooms, because it smells really strong. But this one, Italian citron, is actually, the peel is used for candied citron. And if you've ever had fruitcake at Christmas time, you know there are those squares in there that are various different colors. Well, the squares are actually the peel, the inside of the peel, the white part. I usually cut this on the ground because it's really tough. You can see that. Okay. So it has the peel, this white part here, is cut into squares. Some of the citrons actually have much thicker peel, and that peel is candied and sweetened, but it's actually sweet on its own right now. Whereas the inside, the flesh, is super acid, because citrons are one of the parents of all the lemons and limes and acid fruit that we eat. Lemons and limes are actually not an original species. They're actually a hybrid between a citron and another type of citrus. And this is a lemon. It doesn't look like a lemon because it's got these stripes on it, but it's called variegated pink-fleshed Eureka lemon. So most lemons are all yellow, and these will turn all yellow, but at an earlier stage they have these green stripes. The leaves have different colors of green on them as well. But the cool thing about this one, although this one's not so distinctive, is that the lemons are pink inside. So it has a pigment called lycopene that gives it this pink tinge. And some are a little pinker than others, but it tastes like a normal lemon. But a lot of people in California have these in their backyard because they're a little different. What do I want people to know who are not here in California, not here at UCR? that a number of important things, that if you're growing citrus, you certainly don't want to bring in citrus from other parts of the world that may have the bacteria that causes citrus greening in it. You don't want to bring in budwood, you don't want to bring in seeds. You also don't want to bring those in because they may have a disease that we don't yet have. There are some diseases out in different parts of the world that it would be that people could inadvertently bring them in and not know about it. You also don't want to share branches and to propagate new varieties from other people in other parts of the state of California or in Florida. You also need to know that as much as we take this crop for granted, you know, diseases can have a huge effect on the ability to have citrus in California and in Florida. So it's important to be aware that this research is important and that you should do things that help protect the citrus industry.